Good morning, Pete. Welcome back. I have no idea what your week was like last night. We're all eager to know what it was like for you to be out there being awesome. What did you do? We missed you.
Yeah, well, being awesome looked like actually having a holiday. so, so me and Ange, we took a week up in St Andrews. So we just had a nice break. Yeah, Ange is
Do
a
you
teacher,
golf?
so when she has week off, I try and sync the calendar. So we
Yeah.
had a nice time. Yeah, no, I wasn't playing golf.
Okay.
No,
No, that's
no.
great. You're
Yeah,
lost, bro.
but it was
I'm
great.
starting to get back into that. I love it.
And then actually, the awesome weekend before that, I was at Yinka Onyakan's church in
Oh,
Reading, the Gate
okay.
Church in Reading, which is an absolute joy. Some people know Yinka from bringing the turning to the UK,
Yeah.
but he's a real pioneer. So it was great to be with Yinka, a good friend, and I was there. Then we had a nice week off, so it was great. Yeah, really good.
Did you
What
go
about
to the
yourself? Did you have
steak?
a good week?
Did you go to the steak barn up there?
Oh right, yeah, that's we weren't there this time. It's very
Oh, really?
nice, isn't it? What Balgrove
Yeah.
Larder?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's really nice. No, no. Well, actually, do you know what was incredibly kind? My good friend Stephen McLeish, who works for Leprosy Mission, he out of the blue just got in touch saying, "I'd love to bless you guys. Is there? Do you have a favorite restaurant?" So we mentioned that we liked a particular place in St Andrews, and he got us a voucher for it. So that was a total out of the blue thing. So
Oh,
we went there for Valentine's, which was nice. Yeah.
oh,
What,
great.
what did you do for Valentine's, Brian? Did you
Oh,
remember?
filter. Yeah. Yeah, I did. I don't. You're asking me on the spot. I don't remember. We had family time. It was great.
Okay,
I
you can
don't
think
know.
about that and answer at the end of
Shoot, dang
it.
it. Bring the judgment, everybody. Bring the judgment. There was cards. There was chocolate. Okay. AI today. I want to talk about AI, and I was a little bit intimidated about breaching this topic because I know that there's a lot of fear about this. There's a lot of opinions right now about AI, using AI, and even like what we do, using AI as pastors in ministry. I think there's a lot of complicated thoughts about that. So today, if you don't mind, I'd love us to have a discussion about AI. Do we use it? How do we use it? What is it not useful for? Kind of our general thoughts about this moment, because it is a big moment that we're in
Mm.
right now, where there's a lot of shifting and there's a lot of, again, fear, thoughts, and all the things. I use it. I use ChatGPT a lot. But what about you? Do you? Do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah, I use it a lot. I find it absolutely fantastic. It's I can't even remember who introduced me to it, but I find it super helpful. It's like having a very it's like having a very clever friend with you all the time. It's like having Brian with you all the time.
Yeah.
I can say Brian. Oh, sorry, GPT. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like having a very clever friend with you all the time who you can ask anything about. So you can ask legal questions, you can ask theological questions, you can So I find it super helpful. But I think yeah, it can't replace certain. For example, you couldn't just say, ChatGPT, give me a sermon for Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect some pastors do that,
Okay.
but I think that's just crossing a line that makes preaching devoid of anointing and the
Sure.
process you go through. But as a bolt on to some preparatory things, it's brilliant. So it helps in so many ways. Yeah. How do you use it, Brian? What would be common tasks you would give
Well, I got
GPT?
into it because I had this thought about what this AI stuff was and what ChatGPT was, and I'd hear online or hear just little snippets from different people about it, and I started like imagining. And so I've got this son with this master's degree in computer awesomeness, and I was asking him, "Hey, do you think I could get ChatGPT to make me a program that'll do this, or can make me a program that'll do that?" And finally, my son Ethan is just like, Dad, just use it and you'll just see. Like, you're asking me all these questions, but unless you yourself just start using it,
Mhm.
like you just won't understand. And it's actually really simple. So I downloaded the app onto my computer. I downloaded the app onto my phone, and I just started using it. And kind of learning from trial and error what it's better at, what it's not as good at, where it's helpful, where it's not as helpful. But uh, yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it and started using it. But
Do you know a fundamental question? So before we even get into the nuts and bolts of how we
yeah,
use it, so what should our view be of this? And to be honest, what should our view be of any technology?
Yeah.
It's like, and my view is this: technology is just a thing, and I think isn't it great? Human beings created in the image of God are creative, so it's natural that there's innovation. It's natural that there's invention. It's just a wonderful thing. And with every new innovation, there's the possibility for that innovation to be used for bad, or that innovation to be used for good. And so I think as Christians, we shouldn't be scared of innovation, but we should just be savvy that this could be like the internet. It's been used for great good, but also it's been used for really, there's darkness around that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's knowing how to use the tool for good purposes rather than for. John Lennox, I remember hearing a talk he did on AI, and he talked about it's like a knife. The same knife could be used to do surgery, and that's an incredibly powerful and good thing. But that knife could also be used to kill someone. So AI, in a world stage, could be used by bad actors who cause devastation, or locally it could make someone, it could stop someone using their own brain, and they just depend always on GPT, for example. That would be a bad thing. But equally, AI, if it can help you go further, achieve things. I remember my friend years and years ago, he said, Pete, get as many machines that are going to help you in life. So his mind is like, if you get a dishwasher, rather than you doing it, get the dishwasher, to get a machine to do the things that you do. So he uses, that's his philosophy with technology. Let's use what's been created to make our lives easier so that we can then give ourselves to other things. And I thought that's a good ethos. So that's how I use GPT.
Yeah, I think we should probably limit this down a little bit because AI is a big field and there's a lot of things out there. I suppose what you and I are probably discussing today is specific niche AI such as ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, like these major brands, because there are a lot of spin-offs that are used for dark purposes and evil purposes. But what I find encouraging about using ChatGPT, well, let me just back up. I have basically stopped using Google, and instead of Googling, I use ChatGPT
every time. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And so that and if I was going to encourage people who wanted to learn, it's just anytime that they would go to Google, just do ChatGPT instead. And
do you type your question, or do you do a voice?
Just wherever I'm at,
Yeah.
So I do both. But like I just switched to doing that, and I'm getting information faster. But I also want to say, and this seems counterintuitive from the narrative out there, is that actually I find ChatGPT safer than Google with content.
Okay.
Because ChatGPT has some content restrictions in it that Google's a lot more loose. So for example, I was doing a talk on hell. I was invited to teach on hell at a place. And I don't know, maybe it's a learning thing. Next time I'm asked to teach somewhere for the first time. Oh, great. So now I'm the guy who teaches on hell at that church.
Wow.
But anyways, I was actually teach on hell, and one of the things that I use ChatGPT for is either illustrations or creativity or even generating images. And I thought, well, I want to generate for me an image that captures hell, and I would put in some verses into the search. I'd copy in some verses, and I'd like, okay, I'm looking for something that generates this, and it was like, nope, content restriction. It's not going to create that level of agony and things like that. And I was frustrated. I'm like, come on, I'm just asking you to create something that's biblically accurate here, but it was going to put limits on that. And I'm like, oh.
But Brian, some of that though, and some of this, we need to be aware, some of that isn't just to do with protecting people from a negative image. Some of it's to do with an ideology.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
So for example, GPT, there's AIs created in different countries.
Right.
An AI created in China, it will have certain parameters in place so that you couldn't defame the Chinese regime.
Sure.
Or you couldn't ask questions that would, somehow undermine Xi Jinping, or, it would put parameters on it. And actually, what I've noticed is in the West, the parameters are different. They're a lot more liberal, a bit more progressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, so you mentioned hell,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be it didn't show an image of hell because it's like graphically scary, but it might also be that the idea of judgment is a little bit, it's a bit, no, we don't talk about that. I don't know, because certainly I've put verses in that refer to sins. And so as I'm doing a sermon prep, I ask for a bit of background in a particular verse, and it's referring to certain sins. And it says this could what's the word? Contravene GBT's
Violate content
violate
restrictions. Yeah.
exactly. And so,
Yeah.
but it wasn't to do with anything that was scary. It was just to do with what the Bible talks about sin. So I thought, wow. So
Yeah.
the people behind GBT is just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
AI is just a thing, but the people behind it will, everyone has an ideology. So
Yeah, I was going through my book after I'd written it, and I was kind of just pushing ChatGPT for feedback. I'm like, here's this bit, and what's the feedback? And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! This is not like it wasn't. I can't remember the words, but it it was offensive to certain other faiths, and I
right,
was
yeah,
like,
exactly, yeah.
okay, well, thank you for that feedback. We may respond differently to it, but it
Like to
was
say something is demonic, for example,
it
that
yeah,
refers to
or Jesus and only Jesus, like
uh
Jesus is the only way, and like just the offensiveness of that, and it was flagging that up as a negative thing. I
So,
felt,
so I
oh
guess point number one is we're saying that GPT isn't Christian.
it's not
Okay.
Christian. That's right.
So
That's
it's like
right.
having a very good, clever, non-Christian secular friend with you. Basically, that's what we're saying.
Exactly. And so, I think maybe that's an interesting place to start of its limits.
Mhm.
So as we talk through how we use it, and even when it comes to preaching and preaching prep, which I use it for that, I use it for a lot of things. There's certain things that it cannot do. It cannot give you good theology. And why, when you said don't use it to write your message, if you do that, you're going to be giving people a universally accepted preach
Mhm.
that is actually going to miss the exclusivity of the gospel and some of the more difficult and yet needed truths of the gospel,
That's
because it's
true.
not
Yeah.
going to be okay writing messages that are offensive, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
and also the other thing it can't do is it can't bring the spiritual power. Like it can help you
Yeah.
prepare, but it can't help you pray pair. Like get that spiritual readiness for the and the power. It can produce a tight message with great examples,
Mhm.
but man, without prayer and without the power of prayer, which is something that is not a GPT problem, an AI problem. I think that's more of uh, a problem that we have had for years, where we use Bible software tools to help us speed up, or even books, concordances to help us speed up things for years. And the more we've sped up, it hasn't given us more time to pray, although it could. We've just filled it with other things. And so whatever tools we're using to speed up our preparation, it can never get past the need to be praying and calling people pray for
You
the
can't replace that.
anointing and the impact behind the
So
preaching.
give me some tasks you'd give it. So give just to, it might be helpful for people. Maybe someone's listening in and they're thinking, okay,
Right.
I want to give ChatGPT a shot. Give some examples of things you've done, and I'll give some examples of things I've done with it.
Great. So I'll go one, you can go one, we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
So I was teaching in Colossians. Now, I'm better. I prefer teaching stories in the
Mm-hmm.
Bible as opposed to letters in the Bible. My brain is more wired that way. Taking a story and bring it down to points, as opposed to taking something more condensed and meaty, like one of Paul's paragraphs, and then expanding it. And one of my biggest challenges is when I get down to working through the message, I understand it, I understand the paragraph, but then I go to a total mind blank on illustrations. I can never think of any creative way. I feel like, yeah, maybe every pastor feels like there's areas where like they're the world's worst pastor. When it comes to coming up with stories and illustrations, that's always been my thing. ChatGPT. I came to this point. I'm like, okay, here's my verse, and I just copied and pasted it in. And I don't need to. You just can just put in the reference. It knows the verse, but just put in the reference. And then I'm like, can you give me 10 ways that I could illustrate this?
Great. Yeah.
And then boom, it gives me a list of 10. And it gave me a list of 10. And I saw one of them was a welder. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, I grew up in a welding shop. Okay, that makes so much sense to me. So
Brilliant.
then I
Yeah.
was able to take that concept and then bring it into remembering my own story and background
Yeah.
of being a
So
welder.
you didn't
And
just copy and paste what they said. You
oh,
actually
no,
provoked a thought in you.
right.
And actually, the key, what I think your key is really good. You said, give me 10.
Hmm.
I think that's the key. Right, so let me give an illustration. Okay,
Yeah,
so I
please
talked
do.
to our kids workers about this.
Yeah.
I said, okay, guys, we did a series recently in Jonah. So on Jonah chapter 2, let me show you how this could work, guys. I sat my kids' team down and I said, you put in Jonah 2 and say, okay, GBT, I'm doing and I did this verbally, GBT, I'm doing a kids' Sunday school lesson for 3 to 5 year olds on Jonah chapter 2. Give me 5 examples of crafts I could use and give me
Mm.
5 examples of games we could use. And GBT, we're in a room that is like a little gym hall. So there you go. And I give it that parameter. And then it comes back with boom, 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 do, 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 do. And asking for several, then you can use your brain and say, okay, oh, that's a good one. Or you can take an idea, then you can extrapolate it into something. But what's cool is it says, okay, here are the crafts, and here's the materials you need to order for the crafts. And it was like instantaneous. And the kids' workers were thinking, Pete, we spend hours on Google
Hmm.
trying to find crafts that will link up with that lesson. That's just saved us hours of manpower.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a similar example, sermon
Yeah.
illustrations. Okay, back to yourself, right?
Oh, okay. Well, I use it for background quotes or archaeology facts. So I
Mm-hmm.
was teaching on Assyria and Nineveh, and you got to be a little careful with this way of research. But it just as you would with all the internet, like well, you don't trust what you see on Facebook as the gospel. You don't trust. You Google something and you pull up a website. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily true, but I do find ChatGPT is more reliable because it's pulling from a lot more sources. But I was just asking about Nineveh and the city of Nineveh and the archaeology structures there, and it's able to just say, okay, here's the moat, here's how it was defenses were put together based on archaeology, and I can just ask it for links so I can fact check. I can just fact check it. And so kind of going back that sort of thing, or I want quotes about Nineveh from before 100 BC. And so you can start getting some ancient sources that are describing Nineveh outside the Bible. And so kind of pulling that sort of factoidal information, asking for links so I can fact check, but helps.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another one. So Greek and Hebrew work. So
Oh yeah.
um, I was doing a message on Hero Israel, the Lord our God is one,
Mm.
and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength from Deuteronomy. Okay, and so I wanted, okay, I believe that God, Elohim, is plural, and I believe that one is echad, which is a unity, and it links to, they shall become one flesh in Genesis chapter 2. And I said, can you just, I've heard that, is that correct, GBT? Give me a bit more information. And I just speak it in, and then boom, up it comes. And it kind of confirms, but also doesn't confirm certain things. And it says, okay, and then I say, okay, can you give me what commentators, because I asked a follow-up question, give me some commentators' comments on these points in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Could this verse, for example, be used to prove the Trinity, that God is plural and he's 3 persons yet one God? And then it comes back and says, okay, some people say it could, and here's the people who say it could. Here's some people don't think it totally does, and it needs to be seen in the context of the bigger Bible. Like, wow, great, thank you. Okay, yeah, so there you go.
I love what you said there because I do the same. Like I've heard that this is true.
Yeah.
Is it? Like,
Mhm.
is this actually true? Give me the facts behind. Oh yeah, that's good. I use it in pretty simple ways now. Like I used to use Bible Gateway for
Kelly,
searching.
what can I get for Kelly for Valentine's Day? Did you do that?
Yeah, I should have. Did I do
You
that?
should have done that, man.
I
You
got
should
my
have.
list here. I asked it like tax questions because I wasn't sure if my
Yeah, yeah,
taxes were right, and I was like, "Am I in
yeah.
the right ballpark?" And it gave me
Was it
the
like,
same
should I pay
number.
taxes or not, GPT? Was that your question?
Should I pay taxes to Caesar? Was my question.
Okay.
Said, "Yep."
Okay,
But
linked to that. So here's one
yeah,
linked to that.
yeah,
So it's like having a really good legal friend.
yeah,
We were sending money to India, and
mhm,
that's sometimes a tricky thing to do,
yeah,
um, to help in Christian causes in India. So I asked GPT advice on, okay, I'm looking at using Revolut to do this. Any advice on how I can, should I send it in rupees or should I send it in pounds? What will be better? What will be more cost efficient? Any advice on how I should send it or who I should send it to, or and how do I work with the Indian government in a way that honors the government but at the same time helps a Christian cause in India. And it comes up with really, I mean, like instantly gives me advice, and then you can ask it questions about the advice it gives.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah, lots of troubleshooting. Even like tech issues. My computer's not working. Or my phone is broken, or I can't get this sound to work, or like just any troubleshoot. I use it for everything. But I think when it comes to message prepping, I manuscript as you do, and I'm just kind of typing along, and then I'll I'll remember a verse, and I won't know where it is, and I'll just be
Yeah.
like, "Where's this verse?" Boom, it's done.
Boom. Yeah.
Or I'll be like, "Ah, where else in the Bible does it talk about this? Where else in the Bible does it talk about this?" Boom, and it just gives me just quick research. Now I can look at it myself and be like, "Yeah, I don't really like that answer or that," but I'm still using my brain, but just really quick access for things that I would have gone to Bible Gateway for or Bible Hub. Like you're talking about word searches, I usually go to Bible Hub for that in the past. Not word searches, but like
Commentaries
word
and
searches, like like those circle the words within a puzzle. But no,
okay. So here's
word
another one.
studies.
So
Yeah.
email.
Oh yeah.
So hi GPT, I'm going to send an email to.
Hmm.
Okay, we're in the process of buying a building, for example, in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So I send a letter to my lawyer. Here's his name. I want to convey appreciation for the work he did last week. He asked for three things. Here's the answers I want to give him, GPT. Boom, boom, boom. Um, Sign off saying, I'm grateful for all your help. Call me if you need anything, Peter. And then, boom, in a sec. And I just say it as quickly as that. And in seconds, a perfectly drafted email. If I say, okay, that's a little too formal, I'm on first name terms with this guy. Could you make it a bit more friendly?
Yeah.
Boom, it changes it again. The other thing you can do if you draft an email, and I can dictate for maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes of something, and then it puts it into text.
Yeah.
And if you draft an email, if it's like a huge email, I can say make it 50% of the size, and straight away it just doesn't lose any of the detail. It just makes it more condensed. Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that. I mean, I'm not saying that this happens often, but like when I feel hurt or
Mm-hmm.
triggered by
Mm-hmm.
something and I need to, or insulted by an email, either, historically I might like, okay, I just can't respond for a while, but I can just be like, okay, help me with this response. And it can help me just
Make this more
be,
empathetic. Yeah.
yeah, be kind and be in that. But yeah, emails for sure. Creating an e-course. So I'm working on some e-course creation.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, now I haven't spent a lot of time in the e-course world. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? What do I need? How do I structure it? Are they small units? Are they large units? Like, teach me about e-courses in general. And I can just ask it a bunch of questions and just gather a great starting point. I just for basic, how do I start something new that I've not done before?
Wow. Okay. I mean, so similar to that, we're
Yeah.
about to start a series on First Samuel,
Okay.
and we're going to run from verse by verse through First Samuel into the summer. And I'm trying to look before I look at each individual message. I'm trying to look at the overview.
Hmm.
So I went to see other people who've done great overviews. R.T. Kendall did one. Other people great overviews of Samuel, like a sermon series. And I've had King's Church with Andrew Wilson in London. They did I think it's 7-weeker, which is really tight, or maybe
Wow.
9-week. And then you had others who do like 30-weekers. And then I basically got all their options, and I paste it into GBT and say, "Hey GBT, I'm wanting to make it like 15 weeks roughly.
Hmm.
I don't want to zoom over too much material in each given week, but equally I don't want it to go on for a 30-weeker. Here's some examples of what people have done. I don't want to miss any of the key themes. Come back with a proposal for a 15-week series in First Samuel, break down the verses, give me some key topics that we'll cover over the weeks." And there's there.
Amazing. Yeah, brilliant. So helpful. We started a location in Ghana, as it was said. And so I
GPT, plant a location in
how to
Ghana.
plant a location in Ghana. No, it didn't. It says follow Jesus. No, no, but I don't know a lot about Ghana's history and story. So what I did is I just put my phone in my pocket, turned on ChatGPT with the audio bit, and I just started. Okay, I want to understand Ghana's history. Start telling me about. Let's go back to 0 AD. Just what was going on in Ghana in 0 AD. And I went
Wow.
through the last 2,000 years on a 1 hour walk, just like asking it questions about how it's changed and how it's developed and how it's become what it's become, its religious situation, its political situation. And just had this conversation. It just gives you bits at a time. And then you just keep asking questions. And so I just learned so much as opposed to like buying a book or doing a lot of internet research. I just went for a walk and listened, and it records it all like what it's saying, so I can go back and look at it later.
And you
But
can copy and paste it. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. One last one from me. So
yeah,
small group studies. So
okay,
quite often on Sundays, we obviously we teach the Bible on Sundays, and then through the week, our small groups commonly would take the Sunday message, and they would do follow up discussion on an application and okay, how do we apply this in our lives? And Sammy, who looks after our small groups, I've introduced him to GPT, and I said, hey, Sammy, you could take the PDF of my sermon, paste it in, and because what he does is he sends out a brief summary of the sermon from Sunday, and then he says, okay, here are 3 recap things and then here are 3 discussion questions, and here's maybe a takeaway. And he said, okay, give that brief to GPT and see what it comes back with. It comes back so quickly with here's a summary of the message. Here are 3 discussion questions to help people apply the truths. And again, it just saves so much of his time. And he might not use all of what it suggests. Obviously, this is where you don't shelve your brain. But it will come back with things quicker. And it's like a brainstorm. It's you just got this very clever thing to brainstorm with. Yeah.
yeah. And we're both fans of using this, and we've been so helped by just
Yeah.
the quicker responses. It's not much different, I think, than having these ancient books. When it comes to sermon illustrations. Where I remember 1,100 sermon illustration idea books, from the old days. But there's a lot of fear about this new
Mm.
technology, as there tends to be with every technological leap. How does this work? What will the future be? Will it become smarter than humans? It already is smarter than me, at least. But like the general intelligence stuff, and that's far away. But I if it happens, it happens. But what would your response be when it comes to the fear of general intelligence, like where it can think for itself and it doesn't need our prompts?
So we were doing this series just now where we're actually using the Evangelical Alliance tagline, being human. And we're doing a series, it's like an apologetic series in our church where we're talking about what does it mean to be human. And we've been looking at the image of God, and this is what we've been working through in the last few weeks. And in that, what was interesting is we looked at Genesis 1, where it talks about the days that God created the world. And what's significant is on 2 of the days, so every day God speaks, God says, let there be light, God says, and he spoke everything into being. But on 2 of the days, he spoke twice.
Mm.
And he created twice on 2 days. One was on day 3 and one was on day 6. And on those days, on day 3, he made a distinction between inorganic and organic life. So it was, he'd spoken the oceans and the mountains into being in inorganic, and then he created vegetation and trees, organic life. So he spoke twice on day 3, and the second time he spoke, it created organic life. So it's the distinction between inorganic and organic. And in day 6, he spoke twice, and it was the distinction between animal kind and humankind. That didn't just happen. God had to speak a second time for humankind to be created. So we believe that humankind is distinct. I don't believe we're just highly evolved animals. I believe we're distinctly created in the image of God. And for humankind to come into being, God had to speak. It wasn't just a process that was happening. God spoke. and it was created.
Yeah.
And what? Sorry, go on, right?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so for that level of thinking, and
Hmm.
for that level of, for us to be in the image of God, to have this incredibleness that are human beings, God had to speak for that to come into being. And so you don't go from inorganic to highly advanced human-like
Yeah.
activity without God allowing it. So I don't think there's a consciousness. What does it mean to be human? I mean, there's the consciousness. There's an ability to. There's a spiritual element. So when I've been with both my parents when they passed away, and one minute they're there, and the next minute they're not there. They're not there. You can't deny it. We're not just material. There's an immaterial part of us. There's a spiritual part. It's an essence of us that is spirit. When Thessalonians says we have a spirit, soul, and body, and you can't replicate that through any intelligence. So I don't think there's ever going to be any competition, and it can help us. And in some senses, it can gather information more than we can,
Hmm.
but it hasn't got the ability to have consciousness
Yeah.
and independent conscious abilities. It will always be. I think there'll be a huge limitation there. But do you know what was interesting is as I was preparing for that sermon, I listened to John Lennox talk where he actually talked about AI. Let me read you this quote. This was from a person called Paula Boddington, because if you know, like in all our sci-fi movies these days, it feels like every sci-fi movie is about how AI got too big for its boots and it took over the world, and the robots are fighting us, and we become the survivors in this kind of guerrilla warfare against the robots kind of thing. Started with Terminator all those years ago, and it feels like that's the narrative. But listen to this from Paula Boddington, and I don't know if she's a Christian or not. For if we see the Genesis account of the fall of man as a foreshadowing of fears about robots, then Genesis gets the problem exactly right for exactly the right reasons. It's a worry about autonomy itself. What might robots do if we can't fully control them? Will they adhere to the same value systems as us? Will they decide to disobey us? What will our relationship with our creations be? We can thank the Hebrew account of Genesis for pre-warning us about this danger thousands of years ago. So what's interesting, she's basically saying the reason we're so paranoid about robots taking over the world is if we give the autonomy, it's because that's what we did with God. God gave us autonomy, God gave us free will, and we decided we don't need God, and we rebelled. So it's almost like there's this knowing that we did that. There's this almost a paranoia within human beings. What if our creations do that to us? Hey, who knows? But I thought it was an interesting quote.
Yeah, really powerful. I do want to put a couple caveats down. Like, first of all, when it comes to working with AI, one of the things that's really important is to, if you know, to never disclose the precise location of John Connor. Like that, that's one, that's really important, just in case Terminator is right. Uh, but also, like, just like with the internet, like there are AI programs to avoid and to stay away from. We're just talking about using the positive, helpful tools there. Pete, we need to wrap up. We've got some user questions that we need
Hey,
to get
fascinating
to.
chat, Brian,
Yeah,
and we're by no means experts. We love the technology. It's quite cool,
yeah.
and it can help. It can help people, but yeah. Hopefully,
Any final comments that you're saying? I just want to make sure we say this.
no, I think it's been great. It's really helpful.
My tips are, like, if you're new to this and you've been afraid of it, download something like ChatGPT and just practice using it instead of Google, and just see what it's like, and just use it in that simple way. Ask it some questions. If you're stuck on something, just ask it a question and just see. You can always go back to Google, but just as a good safe starting point, that would be what I would recommend. Okay, listener questions. Now, Pete, I gotta warn you, since our last time, we have had a bunch
Oh,
of
great.
questions like flooding in. I have got a long list, and keep them coming. Some of these I'm gonna convert into probably whole episodes that we'll talk about. So
Great.
really great questions coming in. But because of time, oh yeah, send your questions to Brian and Pete podcast at gmail.com. I was going to say rehope.com. No, Brian and Pete podcast at gmail.com. And yeah, keep them coming. We want to hear from you, and we appreciate the encouragements that have been coming in and the questions. So, simple one today. Best books. Best books that we have read. This is from David Drain up in Aberdeen. Yay for Aberdeen and what God's doing up in Aberdeen. Best books we've read. A few books, authors that have made a huge impact on you. You want to start with that one?
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, just an encouragement from Aberdeen this week is I got a message from our friend Ian Duthie, who leads the King's Church up there, and this week they got a weekly pastors and leaders prayer thing going, which is great.
Amazing.
Fantastic. So it's great to see these springing up in different cities. We obviously had an episode about unity and prayer a few weeks ago. So great question. So okay, here's two that I would highly recommend. This is brilliant. This is by Vishal Mangalwadi, the book that made your world. How the Bible created the soul of Western civilization. Absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend this.
The book that made your world.
The book that made your world. Okay. And it's decent thickness, but it's really, really readable. And he's writing as someone. Often you get people. Okay, John Lennox. He's an incredible communicator, but he's a Western communicator. And what you've got here is you've got someone like John Lennox, except from an Eastern perspective.
Oh, wow.
And it's absolutely fascinating. Talks about how India wouldn't be India were it not for the impact of the Bible. Modern India.
Wow.
The benefits that many people don't realize that actually came from the Bible. So fascinating stuff, really good, big thinking. He was actually recently, Jordan Peterson did an interview with John Lennox and an interview with Vishal Mangalwadi recently. So John Lennox did this interview, which you'll find fascinating as well. But anyway, the book that made your world, brilliant. And I bought this from a friend, Terry Virgo, recently, and he loved it. He loved it so much, he's been buying it for everyone else he knows. So there you go. There's a recommendation.
I can ask ChatGPT, should I read this book? And it'll give me all the good reasons why. Yeah.
See what it says?
Yeah.
Okay, last one from me. Yeah. I took the cover off this one. So, Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland.
Wow.
What a book. Have you read that, Brian?
No, I haven't read either of these.
Oh.
I'm writing down. Yeah.
This is absolutely wonderful. And he talks, let's see if I can find the quote. He talks about how in all the Gospels, in all the chapters, there is only one place where Jesus describes his actual personality. And he says, I am gentle and lowly. Wow. And he takes this book to unpack it. It is a wonderful book. It's just a feast. It's just really nourishing, really good. So Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. The book used to look more exciting. I take covers off because I quite like the kind of more texture, old school. But anyway.
Yeah, it's great.
What were you, Brian?
Oh, and you also recommend the Bible as well. It's a good book.
The Bible.
Yeah, good
best book in the world. I just love the Bible, Brian? Did you not think?
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
What a book. Yeah. What a book every day. I mean, for years, decades, I've been reading this every single day. Mm-hmm. And you don't get tired of it. It's just the Bible is, you're seeing things, I've been reading this for decades and I still see things I hadn't seen before. It's like Revelations come. It's just the most incredible book. Hey.
Right. So probably some of the books that have impacted me the most are biographies, and really like Christian minister biographies. And the reason why I find them so powerful specifically is that I can track the practices that they were famous for and then the outcome in their life over the decades. I can see, okay, they prioritize this, and then over the years, here's the result. Probably the number one book that I keep going back to over the years is by A.T. Pearson, 1901, George Mueller. All Things Are Possible. It gets redone, but the A.T. Pearson biography of George Mueller. And again, just like his prayer life, but his Bible reading practices, his fasting, like all the habits that he had, and then seeing decade after decade of its impact in life. I just find that so grounding. The other one that just rocked me when I was young was the book called Intercessor by Norman Grubb,
But Reese
and it was
Howells.
about Reese Howells' life. And some I was at a church in Seattle at the time, so this is a couple decades ago, and the crazy lady in the church put it on my desk, and I'm like, okay, or thank you, okay, I guess. And then I didn't read it for a while, and then I moved to Scotland, and I don't know, just kind of saw it when I was maybe unpacking boxes, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll give this a read. Lit me up in the area of prayer, launched me on a path, changed my life, and obviously has had a huge impact on my ministry and all of that. But the third book, a very simple, quick book, A Tale of Three Kings by Jane Edwards. Just a
Okay, I'm reading that just now.
tiny, tiny little
Yeah,
book
yeah.
comparing, I think it's poetry. I mean, just comparing King Saul, King David, and King Absalom and
Mm-hmm.
their character and their heart for God. And, as a leader, character and humility and responding in wins and losses is so significant and in pains. And so I find those books really continually lifelong impacting. I've read those books, a couple decades ago, and I continue to go back to them and be shaped by them all these years later.
Brilliant. Oh,
Wow.
great question. Yeah,
Thank you,
brilliant
David.
books.
Thank you, Drain. Okay, so if you guys have questions, you can send them in to Brian and Pete podcast at gmail.com. We're happy to make up answers on the spot. So, everybody, great. Thank you for
Yeah,
see you next week.
brilliant, Brian. Great to chat, and thanks everyone for listening.
We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of the Brian and Pete podcast. If you found this episode helpful, share with a friend and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Brian is the pastor of Rehope Church, a multi-site church that started in Glasgow. He is also the founder of Scotland Bible School, a 3-year Bible school where students study every book of the Bible. Pete is the pastor of City on a Hill, a multi-site church across Edinburgh and the Lothians. He also leads Go Global, a family of hundreds of churches spanning 17 countries. If you'd like to submit a question to Brian and Pete, please email brianandpetepodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to having you join us for next week's episode.